right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Adam, and I will be your moderator. I'd like to welcome back Mark DeTore as our speaker, as he provides insights on how to develop your brand's strategy and identity. Mark is the Chief Operating Officer for MSG Minnesota and has over 25 years of experience in dental marketing, and is also joined by a very special guest today, but I will let him do the honors. Today is a lively discussion, so at any point, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A. We'll answer them as we can throughout or at the end. Henry Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation live or on demand. And lastly, this webinar is sponsored by Henry Schein's Dental Business Institute, as well as Henry Schein Practice Growth. Mark, I will throw it over to you.
Thank you very much, Adam, and good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Welcome to our continuing series from the Practice Growth Marketing Program. I want to let everyone know up front that based on my location in the US, we're having severe thunderstorms and power outages. So there is a chance that I might lose my internet connection over the course of the presentation. So luckily I have a brand expert with me, Jay Miller, who we'll talk about in a minute, who might be able to take over and run solo for me in case I lose power. So just a warning, Jay, in case I go dark here in a couple of minutes. As I said, from a Practice Growth Marketing Program, our goal with this series of webinars is to provide all of you information that can help make marketing a business process within your practice in order to help drive profitable growth. In our previous sessions, our approach has been to just present on a particular topic in a PowerPoint presentation. And we believe that's difficult to watch because I can tend to be a little bit boring, and it's also not as impactful. So last webinar, our approach was to change things up a little bit and to bring a subject matter expert to our webinars so that we can talk back and forth about particular issues that we continue to hear from practices in terms of challenges that they have from a marketing and a communications perspective. So our last webinar was a little bit of banter back and forth between the Practice Growth SEO expert, Michelle Henderson. And tonight, we're going to be talking about that challenging word brand and the implications of brand with Jay Miller. Jay Miller is our Practice Growth brand expert in terms of working with practices and helping practices understand the implications of brand and how you use brand in your practice. So our topic tonight is going to crisscross between brand, which can be a challenging topic, and really what we'll talk about in terms of brand is the importance of your value proposition. And we're going to intersect that with the way your website can deliver that message. So as I said, sometimes a brand is a hard subject to get your head around from a small business perspective. So we're going to try to do it in such a way that it has some impact to your practice in terms of how we discuss it. So Jay, are you ready to go?
I am. Let's jump in.
Let's jump in. Okay. So the way that we approach this in the webinar is that we're going to throw out some questions that we tend to hear pretty often from people that are interested in thinking about their brand and thinking about websites. So we'll throw the topic out, and then Jay and I will discuss how we think about it, how we address it, and key points that you need to consider. As Adam mentioned, and it can be more fruitful for everyone, if you think of a question right away, instead of waiting till the end of the webinar, post your question as we're going through the particular topics so that we don't have to circle back, we can bring them up as we get in. So here's kind of the first question that we tend to hear a lot. So we did have a client the other day that said, I'm not happy with my website and I'm thinking about redoing it. What should I think about? How do I go about thinking about a new website? So Jay, start us off.
Well, I think to give it some context, I'm going to back up a little bit. And I think it's about understanding the difference between branding and advertising. Just like in your financial investment portfolio, it consists both of long-term and short-term investments for the ultimate success. So when it comes to branding, you're really focusing on a strategy that aligns with long-term communication, that is then consistently sharing an idea or thought that aligns with your practice's values. The advertising is a short-term communication strategy that typically is results driven, like there's a form of measurement. And so when it comes to your website, that is the one tool in your toolbox, so to speak, of your business that actually embraces both. It's where you are actually setting up, the goals of the website to align with the measurement and the results from traffic being driven and what you want to convert. Like, what conversion are you looking for in the website, and setting up those goals. So that's kind of the initial part of how brand connects with your website. So you've kind of got to lay some groundwork there. So the second thing is I think it's very important to establish what success looks like, as I was alluding to it. What form of measurement documented at the start or the beginning, so that you learn from it and you can adapt and change, because a website is never done. You don't build it and just sit back and let it do. You need to kind of learn from how it's performing, what it's doing, and make adjustments. And the data of the traffic going to your website should inform you of that. And then I think thirdly, you need to define your audience and develop a brand message that relates to this audience. We like to call it your single thought. Some people use value proposition, but we tell all of our clients that we work with, you don't own your brand, your customer does. So what do they think when they hear your name? And once you know that, that is how you start to control and own your brand.
So Jay, I got a question. In terms of the comment about establishing what success looks like, in all of your experience, do many practices come to the table with, geez, I know exactly what success looks like? Or is it that a good partner has to help drive what success is, or drive that discussion?
No, I think they need some guidance and help from expertise from the outside to help them. I mean, some might have more understanding than others of how to do it, but I think for the most part, I think leveraging someone with expertise in this area you can greatly benefit from.
So is success, because I was talking to a practice the other day, and is success related to what do I want my website to do with existing patients versus driving new patient messaging, like patient portals and making it easy for scheduling for existing patients? And that's kind of one success factor versus another success factor being when someone wants to learn about me, they need to learn about me very quickly and understand who I am.
I think there's lots of different forms of measurement. One is, what kind of impression does your website make? Like, first impressions are so important, and a lot of times it's new patients' first engagement with your practice. So what is that website? How is that reflecting the value and your commitment to your patients from a big picture, from a brand perspective? But then there's the convenience side of it. Like, is their measurement how many people are actually booking their meeting or their appointments online? And are people more likely to book online than want to pick up the phone today? Statistics show people don't like picking up the phone anymore. They would rather just schedule it themselves and have the appointment be done for them online. So that could be a goal. And then you look at like how successful that is, and that can actually change your practice a little bit, because there's not a person answering the phone or being tied up making appointments, because it's being more self-managed over time.
So Jay, I'm going to pop up a picture of a website, one that we have some understanding of, and talk to us about this first discussion about that single message and knowing your audience. and how this website has gone about doing it versus how other websites might. So now, folks, I'm gonna try my best to share a screen and do it properly. Okay, so talk to us about this website and how it overlays into the discussion that we've been having.
Well, I think this is a great example of how this practice makes its brand very relatable to its demographic. This practice is located in a hip, youthful area in South Minneapolis that has an urban vibe to it. And what they're doing is they kind of align themselves with the roller derby girls, and then every year they use the roller derby girls as their models, and use that in all their advertising. And then their message is dentistry for the joyful. Life's full of reasons to smile big, be ready. So it says smile and teeth through making an emotional connection rather than just being straightforward and literal and kind of the cookie cutter sea of sameness we see in the dentist industry with all about smiles. So this is portraying that in a very different way.
So I'm going to compare this. Tell me if you can see this. And let's talk about that whole, what's the brand proposition and the single message that you're trying to deliver. As a brand expert and someone that overlays brand into websites, let's compare and contrast the two.
Well, I think you clearly can get a vibe and a sense of emotion from option one. And it very much is trying to speak to a certain demographic and an audience that is just the area, geography of what they represent and the audience that's in their area. When you come to this website, it's very, it lacks emotion and it lacks feeling. Now, again, that approach that the other firm, Fiant Dental, is using in that vibrant, fun way, it's not for everyone. But you still, in every situation, can do better to make that emotional connection, or make it more relatable and memorable.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna hope to stop sharing. There we go. Thanks. Oh, I think we have one chat. I'm gonna stop real quick and see the chat. Oh, no, it was just probably Adam. So sorry, folks, for interrupting. Okay, so anything else that we have on that topic, Jay? I'm gonna go to kind of on the same vein. A question that overlays the same discussion, which is, you know, why is brand so important? Why is branding so important?
Well, you know, I believe everyone has a brand, whether you're doing anything about it or not. And that is where kind of the big concern comes from, because if you're not doing anything about your brand or doing the strategy behind of what you want to communicate consistently in every brand touch point, you're leaving it up to your audience to define what that is. And they're all thinking different things of what your brand is. And when that happens, it actually dilutes your brand, and it actually is confusing. And it's probably less likely, if you don't have anything to grab onto, it's less likely for someone to even make a referral. So I think it's really important in understanding, you know, the value and the value proposition that you bring to the table for your audience, and make that clear.
So as someone that helps offices develop websites, tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that sea of sameness.
Well, oftentimes what we're seeing is a lot of options being offered when it comes to websites in this industry is more of a la carte template option. like pick your template, provide us this information. There's not a lot of thinking or guidance in how do you create a website that's more meaningful, that will make a stronger connection with your audience and be a better reflection of the practice you want to create.
Okay, so we're gonna take that question, that sea of sameness, the whole discussion of brand, to the question that we get very often. And earlier on, you said, that unique value proposition, or that one single thought about how you differentiate yourself. So someone asked me the other day, they said, I have to look different. Everyone tells me that I need to define my unique value proposition. How do I do that? Well, what's the process that people should think about going through to help understand what their singular value proposition is?
Well, the process or the exercise is actually fairly simple, but the content of that exercise is actually what makes it extremely challenging. And it also, when they're, in the sea of sameness and there being so many, that's also kind of building on the problem of the situation. But, if you follow a process, you can do this, on your own. You can take a piece of paper and just create a left column. And on the left column, you define your distinctive differences. Like, these are things that make you distinctly different than the competition in your city or in your area. And what makes you unique? And it can't be run-of-the-mill stuff like we provide great service, because you know what? Everyone's saying that. These have to be unique, distinctive, different things. Once you've defined that and you understand the audience that you have and the audience that you're going after with the services you provide, you respond to those. And it kind of an exercise, it kind of just gets you thinking in a way that helps you get to what that single thought is and what you think that will resonate with the audience you're going after. And that single thought then becomes the message that you repeat over and over in several different brand touch points.
So I'm going to share my screen again, folks. And Jay, this is one that you actually worked on. So hopefully I'm going to pull it up and kind of walk us through the exercise similar to what you had just talked about. And I'm going to try to make this big so everyone can see it. And the names have been changed to protect the innocent, but kind of walk me through this, what we call the brand DNA.
Yes, so on the left side is what I was talking about before. This is this particular practice's distinctive differences. In this case, Dr. Smith himself was unique because he was fun and silly, which helps the kids relax and not be scared to get their teeth cleaned. And that's kind of the desired response of what we're looking for. And we just keep going through those lists of different distinctive differences, and then putting ourselves in the shoes of the audience and responding to those distinctive differences. And
so the items on the right are those responses that you want to have the patients have, or you think that they should have relative to those distinct differences.
That's correct. And what this allows you to kind of get into the headspace of your audience when a lot of times you might not be the target audience. So this exercise allows you to step out of your own, sense of what you think things should be and imagine it through a lens of your audience. And then once you've done that, then you can kind of come with this harder working, it's not a tagline, so to speak. It's something that really is your value proposition or your single thought. And this, just like your logo, should last for 30 years. Kid focused, parent trusted. And so that's the message we want to convey over and over again. Or specialized in pediatrics, certified in fun. So you can see where then we're trying, and then trusted care with a fear not, have fun philosophy. little play on the words there. These are options of single thoughts that were given to see what was most likely. And then we kind of then use that with what we want to say and how we want to say it. So you have a brand's voice here, and then the words that we have an exercise that answers a bunch of questions that kind of gives the sensibility of the personality, and it becomes how we want to say it. In this case, we want to say be playful, caring, trusted, energetic, welcoming. And then what we want to say is your single thought. And this is really kind of condensing a lot of information down into something simple that helps you keep your brand consistent in everything you do, whether it's a direct mail piece, whether it's your website, your core brand materials like your logo, letterhead, business card, but every brand touch point, you can use this brand DNA to keep you in line, making sure that you're messaging and you're saying this consistently the same thing over and over, because that's what you do own or can control of your brand perception.
Is this a process that really, if I were gonna, if someone asked me, I want to have a new website developed, is this a process that people should think about doing prior to any website development?
It's my belief that content of the website is king. I don't think money should be spent on a website that just makes it work and is a lot of bells and whistles. And so if you're using a foundation for the code to make a website function, that's okay. But when it comes to actually imagery and how you're saying things, your voice, the words, and how you're trying to become relatable to the target audience that aligns with the services you provide, that's where the investment and the value comes into a website.
Okay, let's go on to another question. I actually hear this one quite often. My practice is built on word of mouth. So why do we even need to worry about a brand? My brand is just getting people to recommend me. So, well, why do I need to worry about this? My value proposition is my patients tell other people about me.
Well, word of mouth is really just another form of advertising. In fact, it's actually the oldest form, and it's another tool, and it's very economical. However, it is proven that businesses that embrace both branding and advertising outperform businesses that rely on advertising and sales model only. So, I guess I give the example. If you have a race car and you're entering into a race and you've got a big block V8, you wouldn't use only 6 of the cylinders if you wanted the chance to win the race. You want to use all of your resources to put your best foot forward. And I do think that's what makes doing the work up front and defining your brand is what truly can help you feel unique and stand out. I do think there's a huge opportunity right now because there is so many websites that are looking the same and sounding the same when it comes to dentist practice. So I think it's a money well spent to stand out. It's not going to be hard.
It's very interesting because when we talk to practices about word of mouth, which is a fabulous way to help drive new patient growth, we always comment that if one of your neighbors tells a friend or one of your patients tells their neighbor, we always ask the question, where do you think the very first place they're going to go to reconfirm their interest in that referral? And the answer is 9 times out of 10, even those referrals, the first place they go is going to be the website to check out the practice.
And that person's referral is a firsthand experience of what they like about their dentist. But if that website doesn't mirror what that referral is saying, it starts to add confusion, like, oh, and if there's another, and they're looking at another dentist office and it's connecting better or looks more and reflects the quality of service they're looking for, they might tend to go there instead of yours, even though that you're doing all the same things, if not more.
So let's take this discussion kind of in a similar vein, but a little bit different direction in that back to the website is, and isn't my brand just a logo and colors and a nice website? What else goes into the brand? Can't I just have someone help me redesign my site and that's all I need to worry about?
Well, I think your logo, all of them are important tools, but they tend to be tools that are used for visual recognition. And this is what typically gets left out, when we do a good job of creating our logo, our consistent fonts and our colors, and we create that visual identity, and that repetition creates brand recognition visually, which is very strong in humans. But what often gets ignored, and we see this a lot, is the verbal identity and how people are communicating and what voice they're using doesn't align. It sounds like it's out of a lot of them, like it's cookie cutter or out of a template that's never been changed because there wasn't time to do it or the time wasn't invested to do it. And you see a lot of repetition of the same thing being said when you see as many sites as we see. So the opportunity is there. And I also think, if a holistic approach is taken, that includes brand strategy, marketing and advertising, it will truly, that is what truly communicates, will without a doubt rise above the rest in your competition.
So you made a comment about content being similar from website to website. Are there positive or negative implications to that?
Well, for one, when it comes to Google ranking, if SEO is something that you are investing in, if someone is using the same words that you are because it was a template from the source or the company you're working with and wasn't changed, you actually get docked, and your domain authority goes down. So that's kind of a newer rule to pay attention to, is that you want to make sure that your copy and content on your website is unique to you. Otherwise, Google sees those redundancies across the web and over time, and then will penalize you for it.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a second, and Jay, we can flip it around and you can ask me questions, but I'm going to pause for a second to see if anyone has any questions thus far, so we can circle back if anybody has any questions. Okay. So Jay, I'll keep going unless you have something for me.
Okay, no questions. Well, I have a question. So we've kind of covered a lot of ground from a very high level, but then have kind of dissected it down into the website. Mark, as a practice growth expert, how is it better to have a custom site versus a templated website?
Oh, okay. First of all, there's from our perspective and clients that we work with, there's really both can be very effective approaches. I think a couple of the first things that you have to think about is how engaged and how actively are you involved as a business owner in this process? As we've been talking, as Jay's been talking about the importance of a brand and what your unique thought is and how much you want to go through the effort of coming up with what your voice is and what your unique value proposition is. If all of those things are important to you, you can accomplish very good websites, either choosing a templated website approach or a custom approach. I think that Oh, I'm gonna hang on a sec. Should I be concerned about losing potential patients by having such a strongly branded website like the roll? So we're gonna come back to templated and custom. This is a great question. So Rochelle, Jay, I'll read this one out loud and we'll both address it. Should I be concerned about losing potential patients by having such a strongly branded website like the roller derby site? So I'm going to paraphrase and if I'm incorrect to the person who asked the question, throw out another comment. But I think if you look, Jay, at the two differences between the websites that we showed, the first website obviously gives you an emotional impact, and there's a lot of unique value proposition to emotionally pull in a potential patient. But what if it's someone that lives in the area that just doesn't get into that strong of a visual connection and emotion? And the second website is more calmer, to say, or less emotional. Is that better because you're not going to turn potential patients off? Does that?
Well, I think the approach with we're showing the extreme differences here. And I also, you know, with Fiant Dental, that kind of moved over time. It just didn't happen right away. You know, it started slowly and became more and more a part of their brand. But there's also, even though you have that sense of fun and whimsy, it is balanced by very professional look and feel and approach in its brand as a whole.
Yeah, the way that I would answer that question, similar to what Jay has done, there's no doubt that the first website that we showed is, like Jay said, we picked two ends of the continuum. But where I would challenge practices is, if you're in the sea of sameness, the challenge that you're faced with is any potential patient looks at your site and sees you exactly the same as someone else. So I would personally, my personal opinion, I would argue that you have more of a chance losing potential patients because you look the same and you're in a sea of sameness than you do risk losing potential patients because you've made a strong statement about yourself. The other thing I would add to it is, many times when we're talking to dentists, they say there's certain kinds of patients they really want to have new patients, and certain kinds of new patients they don't want to have. There's good patients and bad patients. Per se, I don't mean to say that they're bad patients, but there are good targets and bad targets. Developing a unique proposition allows you to really send the message to those people that you really want to be your patient. And yes, you may lose some potential patients, but the goal is to lose those that are less in tune with who you are as a practice anyway. So that's, and let us know if we answered your question, if you have any follow-ups to that.
I think there's a larger opportunity for an upside of patients when you can make your brand and your practice more relatable to them. And if you're doing that and you understand the demographic of your approach, you shouldn't have to worry too much about losing a patient.
There is, and one last point before we move on to the next item is, this does intersect with a challenge for practices that they really need to understand the socioeconomic geo footprint that they live in or that they service, and exactly with who in that footprint you really want to be your patients. So it does require thinking through what Jay said in the very beginning, that target audience, that group of potential new patients that you really want, and tailoring that message to those within your footprint, rather than thinking that everyone in your geo footprint is the perfect new patient. So, okay, so oh, thank you. So where we're at, one of the things always is asked, the difference between a custom site and a templated site. And as I had stated earlier, there's really no right or wrong difference. It all comes down to how engaged you are in the process. And I think it relates to the last question that came up, which is in a templated site, you tend to get, in some ways, a sea of sameness to everyone else. So you have to work a little bit harder to change those templates to make things look the way that you want to look unique. When you build a custom site from the ground up, you don't have a template. So it's critical that with the partner you've chosen, you're talking through those expectations and you're talking through all of the things that are necessary to build that site. So for example, whether you're doing a templated site or you're doing a custom site, whoever your partner is, our recommendation is that you break it down into a couple key component parts. The first is developing the proper strategy for your site. What does success look like? And your partner needs to work with you to look at a competitive analysis of the sites within your footprint and walking you through some form of a brand DNA process to get to that singular thought. So the strategy for success, what is it that you're trying to accomplish with your site? What do the competitors look like? And what is your singular thought? So whether it's templated or whether it's custom, that's the very first thing that you have to do. The second thing is understand the user experience. Again, whether it's templated or custom, are you seeing wireframes and a site map that walks you through the key components of the site and what the user experience will be when they come to the site? And is it tied to what success looks like and the strategy that you've built in the first piece? And then the third component that we think is essential is then to get into the design and content. So many people, and especially with templated sites, they jump right into that design and content, choose the template, start working on content, but you haven't thought through the strategy and the experience and the flow that you want your patients to go through on the site. So that third piece is design and content. And then the last piece is the actual development. So templated or custom, it doesn't matter. Where our recommendation comes in is you need to make sure that you're doing those first 3 steps, or you're doing those 3 steps as part of your website development. And your engagement, your staff's engagement in this process is critical. The last thing that we'll state, whether it's templated or custom, the partner that you're working with, you should be having between, and Jay and I differ on this. He thinks less, I think a little more. You should be having at least 4 to 6 one-hour meetings with your partner throughout the course of this process to make sure that your partner's on the same page relative to that value proposition, that unique message, how you're delivering that content, and if the user experience is the right user experience you want. So again, it goes back to what your preference is, but there's really no wrong or right answer. It's just thinking through the right components, regardless of which approach you take. Jay, do you have anything to add to that in terms of how you think about it?
Yeah, I think that's all is spot on in what we're trying to do. And I think when you're working with a partner, it's also about having that consultant to help guide you, because sometimes it's the hardest thing is to see what you are on your own, like when you of the brand and what you're trying to communicate. And sometimes you just need that partner to be able to have a process that listens and helps you. It's right there. It is with everyone we work with. The answer of what we're trying to communicate is right there. But sometimes when you're so close to it and doing it every day, it's so hard to see it until someone from the outside kind of points you in the direction like, well, that's it, and it gets you there. And then once you have that, you learn as much as you can about, that space. And then once you've done that, then you lead. So it's just a very clear approach, and you have someone that can consult you through it, I think is very helpful. Sometimes you just can't see the water under the bridge when it's right there.
Okay, so in conclusion, so where we wanted to go and we want to summarize here are some of the key questions or issues that we think on this topic of brand and website and how they interact and how you maximize the value proposition of your website. So here are kind of 5 things that we think that you should take away as things that as you look at your website and you say, it's time for me to rework our website. Here are the questions or the issues we think you should keep front of mind as you go through the process. The first is, do you have a unique value proposition? Have you written it down? Have you written those singular thoughts that you want your patients or your new patients to think about? And as you start that process, look at your existing website, and does your website and do your ongoing patient communications deliver that value proposition both visually and verbally? The third thing is, are you communicating those messages that you wrote down as your unique value proposition? Are you communicating that message consistently and with frequency, both on your website and how you communicate with patients? And the fourth is, as you get into the process, have you established clear goals and expectations for what you want your site to do? Our goal is to have conversions to pick up the phone and call us, or our goals and expectations are to have our patients online scheduling and using existing portals to pay their bills online. Set the goals and expectations for what you want your site to do. And then the fifth thing is, are you going to be a willing, active participant or a passive participant in the process? And if you ask yourself or force yourself to think about those 5 things, then as you choose your partner and as you move down the path of changing or upgrading or modifying your website, we believe you'll be in a much better place than if you didn't challenge yourself with these questions. Jay, do you have anything to add to that?
The one thing I have, to add to that, is one of the most important but forgotten components in your brand touch points is your people. So if you're talking about being an active participant, if the more of the team that you can engage in the process and get their feedback, But as is also when you're done, you share the brand DNA so they all understand how the brand presents itself. You will get more consistency in how they conduct themselves, having that understanding, creating more consistency, because it's kind of the forgotten brand touch point is your people. Of course, they've got great customer service and patient and communication, but there's still that understanding of how and knowing how the practice wants to present itself, I think is very important.
So we're at 5:45. We'll stop here. Any additional questions that people might have relative to the topic, or questions in general? Maybe Jay and I would be able to answer them, even if they're not related to brand and website, or a topic that we missed over the course of the last 45 minutes.
I'm not seeing any additional
Doesn't
questions.
look like questions tonight.
Quiet group tonight.
It's the summer.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Did you have any more content, or are you?
Nope, we wanted to stop in time for questions, but it looks like we have no questions tonight.
We may have. We got one here. What are ways laymen build SEO? Laymen is in quotes.
Not sure I understand the question. Jay, do you understand the question?
No.
Blair, if you wouldn't
Blair,
mind.
you want to help us out?
We got some clueless folks on the call here.
Is maybe it's related to layman being, if someone wants to do it on their own, or
Sure.
we should have had that.
Such as in no marketing professional.
Okay, so in other words, okay. So if I understand now, Blair, if you're not going to hire someone to help manage your SEO, how can you go about doing it on your own? So I'm going to assume that that's the question, unless Blair, you jump in. Yes, or is that essential? One of the things that we will say, whether it's templated or a custom design, we think it's essential that at the table when you're doing website development, that you have on the team, at least for your website development, an SEO expert that makes sure that your website design and the initial launch of your website does everything possible to start off on a good foot relative to SEO. Because there are a number of, Jay, you might disagree with me. Designers don't necessarily like to make a website that launches with a lot of positive design characteristics for SEO. So if you're not going to have the time, or you're not going to spend the dollars to have someone manage SEO for you long term, we highly recommend that as you're building your website, you're comfortable that your website team is building all of the key things into the website on the front end to make it start out as possible, as good as possible from the very beginning. Eugene asked, what is SEO? Search engine optimization, which is the way that as people search for you and find you on the internet, how you present yourself in front of others in terms of people seeing your website. So when someone searches dentist in my area, who are the websites that are most likely to pop up in that search. And it's important in the design phase to do the necessary things from a website page design perspective, but then it's also important on an ongoing basis on a per page to manage your website appropriately. A little deviation from website to SEO, but they're tied. They're important sisters or brothers in the conversation.
It's all tied together some way or another. Cool. Any last questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Anything from the audience? Otherwise, we'll end a smidge early this evening. Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Jay, for the special appearance. Great conversation, great topic, great webinar. And of course, thank you to everyone for attending tonight. The recording of this webinar will be emailed to everyone within 1 week, so keep your eyes open for that. Did we get a question here? No, thank you. Cool. If anyone is interested in additional Henry Schein webinars, visit henryscheindental.com/webinars for our upcoming schedule. Thanks again, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.